Have you ever noticed how your favorite snacks, coffee, or even rent keep getting more expensive? That's inflation. But did you know there are two main reasons why prices go up? Today, we're breaking it down in the simplest way possible. Demand pull inflation versus cost push inflation. Inflation, a key concept in macroeconomics, simply means that over time, the prices of goods and services increase, and the value of money decreases. Imagine you could buy a burger for $5 last year, but now it costs $6. That's inflation in action. But why does this happen? Well, economists like John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman have analyzed inflation extensively. According to Keynesian economics, inflation is often driven by high demand and increased consumer spending, leading to what we call demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation happens when there is too much demand and not enough supply. Imagine a brand new smartphone launches, and everyone wants it. People rush to buy it, but there aren't enough phones available. What happens? Prices go up because demand is higher than supply. This can also happen when people suddenly have more money to spend, like when governments cut taxes, increase wages, or lower interest rates. When consumers have more money, they buy more goods and services. But if businesses can't produce enough to keep up, prices rise. Another common reason is economic growth. When the economy is booming, businesses invest more, hire more workers, and pay higher wages. This extra income encourages people to spend more, driving up demand and ultimately prices. As stated in Macroeconomics by N. Gregory Mankiw, demand-driven inflation is a natural part of a growing economy but needs to be controlled to prevent overheating. The second type, cost-push inflation, happens when the cost of making goods and services increases. Imagine a bakery that sells bread for $2, but suddenly, the price of wheat doubles. The bakery now has to pay more to make bread, so they increase prices to cover their costs. This type of inflation is caused by things like higher raw material prices, increased wages, or supply chain disruptions. A real-world example is when oil prices go up, making transportation and production more expensive. Businesses pass these costs on to consumers by raising prices. Natural disasters, wars, and global supply chain issues can also trigger cost-push inflation. Renowned economist Paul Samuelson highlighted that cost-push inflation is particularly dangerous because it can lead to stagflation, a situation where high inflation and stagnant economic growth occur simultaneously, making it difficult for policymakers to respond effectively. So, which one is worse? Well, both can be harmful, but for different reasons. Demand pull inflation can lead to economic overheating, where prices rise too fast and people struggle to afford everyday goods. Governments often try to control this by increasing interest rates, making borrowing more expensive and slowing down spending. Cost-push inflation, on the other hand, is trickier because it happens even when demand isn't necessarily high. It can lead to something called stagflation, where prices go up but economic growth slows down, making life even harder for people. A great example of demand pull inflation was in the post-pandemic era when governments gave stimulus checks. People had extra money to spend, but supply chains were struggling to keep up. As a result, prices for everything from electronics to groceries shot up. A classic cost-push inflation example is the oil crisis of the 1970s, when oil-producing countries reduced supply, and energy prices skyrocketed, making everything else more expensive. Inflation isn't always bad. A small, steady increase in prices is actually considered healthy for the economy. It encourages spending and investment rather than people hoarding cash. But when inflation rises too fast, it can make life difficult. As Milton Friedman once said, Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Understanding how it works allows us to make better financial decisions and anticipate economic trends. The next time you see prices going up, you can think about whether it's demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, or maybe even a mix of both. That's it for today's discussion. Hopefully, this gave you a clearer understanding of inflation and why it happens. If you found this helpful, be sure to keep exploring more about economics because it affects us every single day. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.